Hi, we're back with the Chabura and Hilchot Pesach of the Ben Ish Chai. We're going to go through this section. The Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Chaim of Baghdad, he breaks the halachot into several categories that make it easier for us to grab basic essence of Pesach. And each person is going to have to go into the laws of Pesach, according to his ability. Because Pesach is such an endless festival with so many laws and so many interpretations that really you have to find where you are in your observance of the Torah and of Passover. And there are essentials and then there are additions, right? So the Rav first, of course, begins with the beginning before Pesach, which is important for Passover. שקודם ליל 14 צריך לחבר את ההדרים הבתים שבחצר וגם האישה תעין היטב וכל המגדים בכיסים שלהם אולי נניחם בהם חמץ. So he says the first thing we have to do with Pesach, but the first thing that we have to do, of course, for Pesach is to prepare our house. To clean the house, it's not a big idea, right? We do have to sweep and mop and clean the courtyard. And he makes a point, though, here that a person should check all their clothes in the pockets because it's a place where people leave over cookies and crackers and a piece of bread or, whatever they happen to be munching on, a candy bar, and they get left over in there. And then that becomes part of what we don't want to have around the house on Pesach. הספק צריכה לבדוק ולראות. Right? Even if I'm not sure. So you have, let's say a guy has 20 suits. He's going to have to check all 20 suits. Well, it's a doubt. If he wore all those suits all during the year, he should check. If he hasn't, well, maybe not so strict to check all the suits if he hasn't worn them all. And then the beginning of the night of the 14th, we check the house for chametz by the light of a candle. And he says, immediately after the stars come out. And usually, of course, that means 3 stars that are visible to the naked eye. And he should even wash his hands before he makes the blessing, which is a beautiful thing. Because you're acknowledging that now we're going to do something that's from our ancient masters. It's a tradition. It's something that's passed down for thousands of years. It's a part of a ceremony. So we want to sanctify it by how? Washing our hands. It seems like a simple thing, but it's not. Okay. And the rabbis bring many reasons and proofs. Now he says also we should check the cracks of the house with the light of a candle that is only one, not 2 that are together, not woven together like a Havdalah candle. Because that's called avuka, which means a torch. And that's not what we're commanded, a light of a candle. And we do not check by the whole torch. It's an interesting thing. You imagine a guy getting down on the ground of his living room and he's got a torch that's got a 2-foot flame. There's some danger over there. We're talking about a little candle. A little candle's not going to burn your beard, God forbid. Things have happened. But, you get down there on your hands and knees and the kids love it. What are you doing, Dad? Why are you bending down on your hands and knees and walking, crawling across the living room floor looking for crumbs? Now, that's a funny religion. That requires explanation. So that's part of the whole idea of Judaism, is to get our kids involved. What are you doing? Well, we're checking for chametz. We're trying to see how clean we clean the house. So, for all of you who are fathers, I think you understand what I mean. And those of you who are not, bless you to have the experience because I think the funnest part of Bedikat Chametz is going around the house with the kids, checking every corner and crack, and then you find a whole loaf of bread. No, well, we'll see how it goes. Okay. Now the Rav goes on, candles that come from Europe, they have animal fat in them. That's a problem for a Jew. And we wouldn't use that for a mitzvah. Okay? Now, it could be, either treif animal fat or it could be even, unkosher animal fat. But for a mitzvah, you wouldn't be able to use it. Now, of course, certain types of animal, like a pig, we couldn't use the fat for anything. But nonetheless, we have stages of understanding here on what the bidika is about. And the idea of course, the bidika is searching the house for little pieces of chametz. Of course, the rabbis teach us that's searching ourselves for a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of gava, a little bit of the things that we need to remove from our heart. And I guess, if you get down on your hands and knees with a candle in your living room, that's kind of humbling in itself, with all your kids following you around and and saying, Abba here, Abba here, Abba here, But really, that humbling aspect is just finding out who I am. So why am I embarrassed to find out who I am? It's a very deep question, something we need to ask ourselves a little bit. Why am I embarrassed to find out that I have arrogance here, I have arrogance there? I'll tell you a secret, folks. The place of our arrogance is usually where we're most talented. So if you check where you're good, that might be where your arrogance is. Because God makes us that way. And if you want to really know the big picture, God is the greatest in everything. So, L'chvodi barativ yiratzarti v'asitiv. For my glory, God says, I created you, built you, made you. My glory. So God's not afraid to have pride in his creation and to say why he did it. So we too have to learn from Hashem. So Hashem has pride in what he creates, and it's okay. But it doesn't mean I'm better than you, or anybody's better than anybody, because everybody has a beautiful point, a point that is special to them. Okay. So we learned a couple of halachot about the bidika with a candle, right after sunset, and we wash our hands, and also we don't speak anything after you wash your hands to do the bidika. We make the blessing, Al bir chametz. We don't speak to anybody else about mundane matters because we are engaged in a mitzvah that might take us a long time. If you own, a mansion in Mar-a-Lago somewhere, you got a lot of rooms to check. So moving on to Rebbe Nachman and some teachings that have been going on for like 2 weeks at least, maybe more. We've been learning these things together, which is a gift that we can do that. And we learned last time about this whole idea of the attaching the Merkava to itself. Now we know the Merkava is the rabbi's metaphor for the vehicle of transcendence. And that's a big phrase, and okay, we can live with that. It's a vehicle of transcendence from the body to the upper realms. It's called the Maseh Merkava. Now the Rebbe says to fix ourselves from the broken leaders and the broken advice and all the negative things that we've been dealing with this in Torah. I don't even want to go over them. You can look in them inside. The Breslov Research Center has printed many of Rebbe Nachman's books in English, and it's worth checking out. And if you need the English, and it helps, but we got to keep going forward. But what does this mean to attach the pieces, the parts of the Merkava together? He says it's through the angels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. Now these angels represent, of course, the four directions, right? Northwest, east, and south. And there's endless reverberations of those meanings in our ladders of metaphors, okay? But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you refining them, bringing them together. Likasher Merkava, he writes. Merkavo Argaman, and he brings the names of the angels. What does this mean? So I've been working, we learned this last time together, last week, and I'm still like turning the phrase over in my brain. And then suddenly it hit me this morning when I was looking at this Torah, that what the Rebbe is talking about is like, how do you fix the influence of Michael on you and the influence of Gabriel on you, these archangels? I mean, this is big stuff, right? And Raphael in the heart, and Uriel in the Malchut. What are we fixing here? Well, he tells us that the kesher, then the attachment of these parts, Mimino, Michael, Mismolo, Gabriel. In other words, it's bringing these forces into balance. Bringing the forces of Michael, Chesed, loving kindness, into balance with Gabriel, the powers of power and might and strength. Bringing those two together is tying the Merkava together. That I don't have too much Chesed and I don't have too much Kavura. That they're in perfect balance. That center line is the balance. That's the tying the Merkava together. That's an amazing thing. The Rebbe's teaching us here. And also that we have the other two directions. We have Uriel and Raphael. Uriel, Malchut, Raphael, Tiferet. We're also achieving a balance between inception and expression. The heart thinks things. We see things. We feel things. We hear things in our heart. But our malchut expresses them. Our hands and our feet, our mouth, the brit. These are the way we express ourselves in the world. There has to be a balance between your inspiration and your expression. A balance between this idea of my dreams and my reality. You could have all kinds of dreams, but no reality. Or you could have all kinds of reality, but they're not based on anything. But the balance, this tying together of the Merkava, of these powers, is connected, the Rebbe is saying, to these four angels because they represent these powers. That I need to have a balance between the heart and my expression. Not too much, not too little. Again, just like Chesed and Gevurah, not too much, not too little. When they're all in balance, that's the tying of that knot. And that's when the Merkava becomes active. Okay. So that went back to paragraph Yud Bet. We had already gone through up to paragraph Yud Daled. In paragraph Yud Gimel, we also learned about these three shofar blasts, that they represent also the fear and understanding and the idea of the tefillin of the mind. And this is, of course, we learned earlier in the Torah that the tefillin of the mind is the aligning with the mind that you have a holy dream. Okay? And this also touches on the idea of the fathers and the fathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, of course, is part of the Merkava, bringing those into balance. But the dream also, we learned that there are these fallen loves that affect the way we think and the way we dream and the way we speak even. Okay? And so these all have to be lifted up. When you reach that balance, the external things fall away. When you know what's real love and what's real awe, we don't get taken by these fallen loves and fallen fears. You walk down the street and you see people running away from a dog. And why are they running from the dog? Because they're afraid. But the dog hasn't necessarily done anything. But they've been educated that dogs are dangerous and they're afraid. They've influenced that way. There's many reasons why that happens. Some of them are very tragic. However, if you're not afraid of dogs, why should I be afraid of dogs? Because somebody else is? Because he's big and he looks mean and he barks? Now, that fear is, it's like any other fallen fear. Where's God in the equation? Who's giving that dog the power to bark at me? So we really have to understand that our fear is really centered on the creator and the director of the whole story here. He's the director of our lives. We're playing out those movies. So we have to know he's behind the dogs and the government and everything else we're afraid of, and terrorists and stock markets, He's behind it all. We just got to be with him. And then our advice will come to us. All right. And all of this, we said, is the goal of fixing the injustice or what's called kilkul mishpat. Right? I'm just trying to get up to where we're going to begin for today. Sorry. But this kilkul mishpat is the breaking of our ability to judge. Okay? And that's something we all need. I don't care if you're judging apples or avocados or you're judging, pension funds. In mergers and acquisitions. You're judging. And you need to judge. And you need the power of judgment. But if our balance is off, our judgment is off. Okay? So we need to realign ourselves. It's interesting using that word because we just said 3 things that bring a person back to himself are, right, a good smell, a good sight, and a good voice. So here we have this idea that the bringing back our self is going to bring back our judgment. To make good judgments and not bad judgments. And then you feel happy, you feel good with yourself, you feel good with the world. That's really important. Because nowadays everybody's trying to push our judgment left and right all the time. Right? And we have to, where am I in the equation between the advertiser and the manufacturer and the distributor? Where does the customer fit in? All right. With all of that said, my friends, we are moving on to paragraph Yud Daled. This begins Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret. He brings these 4 major festivals, major Moadim in Jewish life and the Jewish calendar. Rosh Hashanah, New Year's, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Sukkot, the festival of the tabernacles as they're called, and Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, the day of the end of the festival and the beginning of the request for rain. So we could call it the rain festival if you wanted, but not exactly. Okay, Rosh Hashanah hu b'china tikunam emunah. Now, Rosh Hashanah is the fixing of our faith. B'chinat af emunatcha b'kahal kerushim. And even your faith in the congregation of the holy ones. So Rosh Hashanah is the fixing of our faith, and he brings that right to the point of being in the Kahal Kerushim, that Rosh Hashanah is a time of gathering. It's a time of coming back. It's a time of everybody getting together. Ki az nivkapsim kol hakehilot hakadoshot. And the Rebbe says it, that all the holy communities gather together in Rosh Hashanah. And when all the people gather together, listen, it's very nice. All their little sparks of faith gather together. It creates a big fire of faith when you're with a group of people that have faith like you do. And even your faith, and you see the greater faith when you see this gathering of people. You go to the Kotel, on Yom Tov. You go to the Kotel on Friday evening. You see this gathering of people from everywhere, all over the world, and they all have some kind of faith, right? Or why are they there? And even if they don't have faith, it means that if they're there, that means they do. They just don't know it. But nonetheless, all these these little sparks of faith, we create a big fire, a big power of Al Yezeh Naseh Tikkun Hamochin. And this renewal of our faith fixes our mind, right? Tikkun Hamochin, the fixing of the brain. V'zeh Rosh Hashanah, and of course that's called Rosh, the head, Shana, the year, the head of the year. The fixing of the head is this new emunah. Okay? Rosh Daika, the Rebbe says, Ki naaseh nimtakim b'chinat hamochin. Because this beginning is the fixing of the brain, of the mind. And now he jumps right down to the level, the brain and the head, the Rosh Hashanah, is also the fixing of the 5 senses in the head. Right, what are our 5 senses? The mouth, you taste; the nose, you smell; the eyes, you see; the ears, you hear; and of course, the skin, everywhere is the hush of touch, the sense of touch. For all 5 of these, shekulam nimtza'im b'bchinat Rosh Hashanah, we see all 5 of these senses are included in the festival called Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. These 5 senses in the brain, Ri'ah, Shmi'ah, Re'ach, Ta'am, and Mishush. Right, we just said them. Right, sight, sound, touch, smell, and hearing. Well, I said that sound, and touch, and Ta'am, taste. And all of them are drawn from the brain. Right? Your pleasure in drinking something or eating something is not in your tongue and it's not in your stomach. It's in your brain. Now you might experience it in other parts of your body, but that's usually what we talked about earlier. That's also that sense of relief from hunger is also a pleasure that I'm no longer hungry. We're not talking about that pleasure of the relief from hunger. We're talking about here the pleasure that's coming through the senses in the head. Right? The pleasure of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the skin. And they're all from the brain, because we have he calls them gidim here, but I think we would call them nowadays nerves. Right? That there are bundles of nerves that connect all our systems, all our organs to our brains. And all these 5 bundles of nerves are connected to the brain. From the brain to the senses. And these 5 senses Rosh Hashanah. So if we look in the Rosh Hashanah, we'll see the 5 senses represented in the mitzvot that we do. Okay, I'm just checking the clock. We're going to have to finish pretty soon. So the Rebbe decides, now Rosh Hashanah is now the head of the brain. Interesting idea. Rosh Umochin, right? The head, well, who is the head? He's got a pretty head? No. It's not about it's not about their nice head. It's about what's inside the head. Right? And so we have here that how we get things inside our head through these 5 senses. All the information that you have comes through your eyes or your nose or your mouth or your skin or your ears. So these 5 senses, we should think of them as gateways of knowledge, gateways of information. Right? And we should appreciate them tremendously. And I'm sure, lo aleinu, that if you talk to anybody who's lost any of their senses, they can tell you straight up how devastating that can be. God forbid, lo aleinu. But still, it should help us appreciate that these senses, and if we look into the festival of Rosh Hashanah, we're going to find them there. And this is going to be a very long paragraph I see ahead of us, but believe it or not, we're into the final mile and a half of this Torah. I don't know. Maybe it'll just keep going on forever. But we're going to stop now. and leave us with that station break, and to be continued tomorrow, God willing, that we will learn more about these five senses and how they relate to Rosh Hashanah, and how they relate to the head, and how the mind miraculously gathers knowledge. And of course, the knowledge that we're after is the knowledge of Hashem. So you should all have a great day, and we'll look for you tomorrow. God bless.